Welcome to Pop Culture Roulette for all your pop culture needs. We're America's podcast. All right.
Nice.
Welcome everybody. We are in the doldrums of the sports world. We are in between the Super Bowl and the beginning of the baseball season. Pitchers and catchers have reported. Some other teams are starting to report this week for spring training. Apparently, Jeremy has decided he has to report for spring training, even though he's not a professional baseball player.
He
Uh,
he he could be in the NBA All-Star game. We don't know.
that is true. Nobody knows who's in the NBA All Star game. People don't watch that.
Yeah, he could be in the celebrity portion. We'll have to tune in to find out.
We will. Yeah, but he is not with us today. It's just me and Justin. Justin.
Hello. The the
Uh,
the, the beards will go
all
wild.
right. Yeah, had
I
to
don't I didn't know what a good thing would be in there for that.
say the one of us that doesn't really have a beard is not here. The other two is making us the
Yeah.
hairiest, probably making us one of the hairiest podcasts in the podcast world.
You up this easy top.
All right. Well, anyway, so this weekend, the new Captain America movie was released. Did you get a chance to go see it yet?
No.
Okay, I did, of
That
course.
that might be a streaming watch for me.
It was enjoyable. I mean, it wasn't as good as the other Captain America movies, not because it was Anthony Mackie over Steve Rogers or Chris
Wow.
Evans. Um,
Real name, actor name. Okay.
um, Anthony Mackie, Sam Wilson took over for Captain America in the Falcon Winter Soldier TV show.
Did see
Um,
that.
and we all know that Steve Rogers retired slash got super old through time traveling at the end of Endgame.
Stayed in the past. Is that what he did?
Yeah. So we
Wouldn't that have messed up a timeline?
I don't know. Time travel is always difficult to because it's one of those things of like if you this is why like time travel movies are a lot of fun. Like Back to the Future, that series is one of my all-time favorite movies. We've talked about time travel before.
Yeah,
Um, I do like a good time travel movie. From a philosophical standpoint, time travel is impossible because anything that's already happened has happened. So if time travel exists, then it already exists because the people who came from the future to the past have already done what they did.
yeah. So that is just kind of a weird loop.
Right. So that kind
It's
of
like if you have a Hall of Fame quarterback who goes to the Jets, fizzles out for 2 years, and then down the line you have a Hall of Fame quarterback who goes to the Jets and fizzles
right.
out for 2 years.
Yeah, it's very, history repeats itself. It's very
Yeah.
cyclical. But it's
Uh,
just to say, like, as much fun as time travel is, and as much fun as it gives, you've got great movies and books and TV shows. It's just not possible because, like, if you go back and change it, it's already been done. So, like, that means that whatever we read about in history can't be changed. You just can't. Anyway, but that's not here nor there. And what we're going to talk about today is in the fantasy world. It's in comics. We have to remember that not all of it makes sense because
because it
magic,
may because it makes millions of dollars
because it's the comics. NERD. No one ever really dies unless you're Uncle Ben and then you stay dead.
several times over.
It just no. Because I mean, even like in the world of Bruce Wayne, they've brought Thomas Wayne back from the dead once or twice.
Yeah.
But Uncle Ben seems to be the only one who he died and he stays dead.
R.I.P. Uncle Ben.
Poor Spider-Man. All right,
Good
anyway.
rice though.
So what is your knowledge of Captain America? Where do you stand with Captain America?
About what you've seen in the movies.
Okay. So you know that Captain America is Steve Rogers.
Yes.
Okay, that's about the extent of your knowledge of
And
Captain
his
America.
and he's friends with Bucky,
He's okay. All right.
who's the Winter Soldier, who is an underrated character in these movies.
Yes. All right. So Steve Rogers as a character was invented to or hit the newsstands in December of 1940, when Marvel Comics didn't exist yet. They were under a brand called Timely Comics. Timely Comics became somebody else, eventually becoming Marvel. Marvel kind of overtook Captain America. Captain America, from a publishing standpoint, from about 1940 when it was developed until the early 50s was kind of there, but then he just kind of went away.
So he actually was created to fight Nazis.
Basically, I mean, he
Huh.
started right before World War II, but essentially that was I think it was like even in 1940 the writing was on the wall. Like, well, I mean, it was obviously happening over there before we got involved with it. But I mean, I think everybody in this country knew that eventually it was something we were going to have to get involved in.
Yeah.
You know, um, so yeah. But when World War II ended, the American, like, kind of pet died down a little bit. The extreme patriotism that World War II brought kind of fizzled. So the Captain America as a sellable comic kind of fizzled. So he stopped becoming a weekly or monthly book as he had been, and was published infrequently over time. And that's important because that brings us to where we're going to be eventually. He came back in the 60s, and then he went away again, and then he came back. But Steve, he was created by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby,
Hmm.
two pretty big names in the comic book industry. Eventually, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and some of the other guys kind of reinvented him and brought him back. And this is where part of the problem happened. When they brought him back, they were like, he's been frozen. He fell out of it. What happened in Captain America, the first Avenger? He fell out of the plane in Antarctica, was frozen. And because he had the super soldier serum, he could stay in suspended
Yeah.
animation for decades and
He
not.
he went he went dormant like a crocodile.
Right. Um, Unfortunately, either through just intentional ignoring of these stories or not paying attention to your own history, a lot of stuff happened with Captain America in between when they said he was frozen and when he was unfrozen. And they kind of had to justify what was happening with Captain America in the time frame. So we have, what happened in the comic books? 12 or more different people at some point in history have become Captain America.
I mean, yeah, it would make sense that other people could do it because it's more just a symbol than a
Right.
person.
Right. And this is my point, and this is, there's a reason ultimately why I wanted to do this one, not just because it's a fun history.
And the
Um
movie just came out, doesn't hurt.
right, trying to, synergy, putting that. We probably should have done this episode last week, but the Super Bowl got in the way. Stupid
Yeah,
Super Bowl.
that was a waste of time. The pregame video games were fun.
Yeah, that's always a good time. The party is always more fun than the game itself.
Yeah.
But
Anyway,
anyway, all right. So the first guy who first there were three guys who at some point officially became Captain America in between when Captain America came back. The first one was William Nasland. He was created in March of '77. He had no superpowers, was just a gifted athlete. Um, and he also went by the Spirit of '76. He died,
did he?
so that they went with a character named Jeffrey Mace, who had oddly enough been created in March of 1941 and just been kind of floating around. He had been going by the name Patriot.
Okay.
So when like they were like when Spirit of '76 or when Captain America, who he was killed in a mission, they were like, well, we need this other guy. So Jeffrey Mace stepped up. He also had no superpowers. Was just a gifted athlete. He was recruited. he became the third Captain America, obviously after Steve and William Maslin. Eventually, he just was like he retired. They used the character of Jeffrey Mace in Agents of Shield, played by Jason O'Mara. Yeah, I don't.
I don't know. I am so far behind on that, on any
Right.
of the
I mean,
Marvel
I know you're
cinema.
doing the Arrowverse stuff, so but they only called him Patriot. They didn't call him Cap. He just so he in the MCU he never became Captain America. And then there was a character named William Burnside that they were created in 1972, which is where everything gets confusing. And this is where at some point before Marvel became Marvel. I mean, they've been Marvel for a long time, but when they before they were like, hey, all of our stories need to make sense. All of our characters need to, follow each other's story. That even if Spider-Man is over here doing something, he's not directly conflicting with what Spider-Man might be doing over here in this story, or isn't contradictory to what, Spider-Man and Wolverine are over here and Captain America and Bucky are over here, but they're not directly contradict. So
But
Marvel,
there needs to be that cohesiveness between
yes, the
everything. Got it.
continuity. Before that existed, they had these problems.
Old Billy Burnsides.
So now,
Was that his name?
so the Captain America stories that were published in the 50s were set in the 50s. So when all of a sudden you're like, hey, Captain America was technically frozen during that time, you're like, but you have all these stories that existed, like it was set in the 50s. Like, how could he be frozen if him and so basically they were like, there was these other guys being Captain America. So that was a way for them to not just be like, ignore everything else we did. Or, trying to say this story's not canon, but like still being able to use stuff that happened. That's the problem that DC has, or had when they blew up where every so often they have to blow up the world with a Final Crisis kind of story,
Yeah.
and start over again and be like everything reset.
And now hopefully with Gunn in charge,
Yeah.
it might not be such a crap show.
So Burnside was obsessed with Captain America. He so much that he became a PhD in history and learned the secret origin of Captain America. So he legally changed his name to Steven Rogers, and
Mm.
he took an unstable super soldier serum. So he,
As one does when they're obsessed with people.
yeah. So it made him unstable and psychotic, often attacking people for having a different race or just different opinions.
Who hasn't?
Well,
You
um,
disagree with me? We've attacked each other several times on this podcast
we have attacked each
for
other, but
having a difference of opinion during a bracket battle. It's fine.
right, and it's one thing to do it for different opinions, but it's another thing for the other part of it that's much more problematic. But basically, it was a way to say, hey, we understand that maybe some of the Captain America stories that were published under Timely Comics or one of the other brands could be considered problematic. So rather than say this was Steve Rogers, it was Steven Rogers,
Mm,
and it was this other guy.
yeah, that was Billy Burnsides.
That was William Burr. So they arrested, put him on suspended, and put him in suspended animation. And of course, Red Skull eventually found him, brought him back out, turned him into something called the Great Dictator, or no, not the Great
Oh,
Dictator, the Great Director.
I
But
prefer
it,
Great Dictators better.
yeah, if you look at his costume, it was yeah.
Mm.
So every so often they'll pull him out and use him for something, and then they just like everything they retcon whatever they need to retcon, which then brings us to in 1974. So Captain America, they bring him out of suspended animation, out of being frozen. They bring him back. They start the Avengers. Um, but again, starting in the 70s, kind of post Vietnam, the rah rah go America world that we lived in was kind of not as acceptable. So like it was kind of they kind of wanted to bring down the like go Team America thing, which I'm not an opinion that I would agree with, but maybe trying to sell this comic worldwide. Although you're calling him Captain America, it's kind of hard not to,
Yeah. Red, white,
you
and
know,
blue everywhere.
right. He quit slash resigned and became a character called Nomad.
All right.
So kind of like in the movies when Captain America donned like the black outfit and like had been was on the run from Nick Fury because he refused to sign the Sokovia Accords.
Right.
That's kind of the Cap becoming Nomad era for the movies. This happened in the books. There were three different guys who tried to become Captain America. There was Bob Russo, who broke his arm swinging from a building on his first mission, and he just quit. He's like,
Shit's dangerous.
I'm done. There was Scar Turpin, who got beat so badly on his first outing that he also quit.
It's a dangerous world out there.
And then there was Roscoe Simmons, who owned a gym that Steve Rogers had trained at. He didn't know that Steve Rogers was also Captain America, but like he was all like, yeah, he was, super good. Again, other than Steve Rogers, so far, very few of these men were actually super powered. They were just like, we're really good at being stuff, like
Yeah.
really good athletes. So
We're
that's
the
what this
we're,
guy
we're the
was.
one percenters.
So he gets captured on his first mission by Red Skull. Red Skull unmasks him and goes, "Hey, you're not Steve Rogers. You're an imposter." So he kills him.
Nope. At least
So,
he learned that Steve Rogers was Captain America before his demise.
right.
He's like, oh, I trained with that guy.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if Red Skull told him why he was like, "Hey, you're not Steve Rogers." Or so much just
And it's
like,
like, what?
"You're not Cap." Anyway, when Roscoe, good old Roscoe died, Steve was like, "All right, you guys are going to keep trying to push these men into being Captain America. I'll come back." And
Oh, for 3. Here I
yeah.
come. 3 strikes, you're out. I'm back.
So now we're up to six different guys who've been Captain America, not named Steve Rogers.
Well, there's
Um,
Steve and Rogers.
well, okay. I mean, well, technically he was William Burnside who just changed his name.
Billy Burnside.
All right. So in November of 1986, Marvel had created a character named John Walker who called himself the Super Patriot.
That's the one from,
Falcon and Winter Soldier. That's
yes.
that's the one that Wyatt Russell plays. He got in the comic. Now this is comic books, and I'm obviously oversimplifying a lot of this because we're trying to push in a lot of comic from 1940 to 19. Well, now we're up to 1986. That's 46 years of history, and we're condensing
And
storylines
in
into.
probably about 22 minutes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, roundabouts. So, I'm condensing storylines and I'm cutting large chunks of it out because I am not an expert. I just read a lot of stuff on Wikipedia and I've read a lot of comics. Anyway, John Walker gets power. There's a character named Power Broker who can, for the right amount of money, can get you superpowers. Not necessarily the superpowers you want, but he can get you superpowers. He decides that Cap doesn't go far enough, so like he wants to be even more Cap. That's why he calls himself Super Patriot. They Cap quits it. This is a common theme with Captain America with Steve Rogers. He's constantly saying, "I'm out."
Oh, he's a quitter.
He apparently he resigns a lot. So he
No,
quits, and the
like,
government was like, the government was like, well, we have to have Captain America. We can't not have Captain America, right?
yeah, this is a symbol that people look to for, I don't know,
So
guidance, put
yeah, I
their
agree.
faith in.
Yeah, so they're like, hey, this guy over here calling himself Super Patriot, let's give him the job. So he becomes Captain America for a little while. He tries to emulate Cap, but because of his lack of emotional control, he tends to go too far. We saw that in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. He maybe kills people occasionally, maybe beats them a little bit more than he should. Just can't doesn't doesn't do it quite right. Like
Hmm.
his well, because his superpowers make him unstable, and he wasn't like. I think that's like as much as Steve Rogers is superpowered. Part of his superpower is like who he is as a person. Like
Yeah,
his
like
soup.
his backstory and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
right. Um. Anyway, he goes too far. His secret identity of John Walker is revealed, and of course, his enemies immediately kill his parents, which drive him to have a mental breakdown. He's
Understandable.
Yeah, he's captured by again the Red Skull. Red Skull likes to capture a lot of these people, and Cap has to save him. Like Steve Rogers comes out of retirement or unquits again.
You can.
Um, gives back the man. So Cap gives back the mantle, and John Walker kind of is like, oh, sees the error of his ways a little bit and becomes a character now called U.S. Agent. I'm guessing this is the character that we're going to see in the Thunderbolts
Okay.
because he is in the Thunderbolts. And obviously, he tried to become Captain America, went crazy, gave it up in Falcon Winter Soldier, which is how Sam got to be Cap. But, we've seen the trailers for Thunderbolts, and John Walker, Wyatt Russell is in it.
Yeah, clearly in it.
So I'm guessing they're going to call him U.S. Agent. I'm guessing that's the character coming to terms with the fact that like he needs to maybe not be so crazy and over the top, like trying to figure out how to control himself and be more like Steve.
All right. We can head to Vegas, place a bet on him being called U.S. agent.
I mean, I don't know if they'll take a bet on something that's easily already found out since the trailer's been
That's
released.
that's true.
I mean, I didn't look at IMDb to back it up. I'm just saying, like, Marvel tends to maybe stay somewhat closer to the comics than maybe DC does. All right, that
Yes.
brings us to another character that we met in Falcon and Winter Soldier, Isaiah Bradley.
All right.
Isaiah Bradley was created in January of '03. Now, this is a little bit more of a retconny thing and like kind of creating a character and putting him in a situation where it didn't exist until 2003. So during the Marvel decided in '03 that they wanted to kind of play with some history and do some things, make some statements that maybe were a little uncomfortable for a certain segment of the population, and or just kind of force us to kind of look back on some more uncomfortable parts of history. Are you aware of the Tuskegee Airmen experiments?
Yes.
Okay. So, obviously our government did some very bad things to a very large group of men during World War II. So, Marvel kind of took that as an inspiration and created this character named Isaiah Bradley. So, during World War II, the US government attempted to recreate the super soldier serum because they obviously had done it with Steve, but they were never able to because they wanted to have whole troops of Steve, not just one, but they weren't able to get it done. So they had tested on over 300 black soldiers, uh, accidentally or intentionally killing all but five of them.
Well, not a
Um,
very good success rate.
no. And then throughout the missions that they started or just training, everybody but Isaiah Bradley was killed. Um, so now you have the first black Captain America. Now, remember, this didn't happen until the book wasn't written until 2003, but they're saying this all happened back in the 40s. Um, so, as Captain America, Isaiah is captured by the Nazis. He
Not Red Skull.
Not Red Skull, just the Nazis. I think Red Skull was somehow involved in it, but he is rescued. But to maintain the secrecy, the U.S. government killed a lot more than just the 300, or I guess the 299. They killed a whole bunch of other people, and they arrested him, court-martialed him, and locked him away until 1960 when President Eisenhower paroled him, and he went on to live in relative anonymity, except for in the black community. Everybody was like, "Hey, look, it's Black Captain America," but everybody else is kind of like, "Who's that guy?"
Right.
Um, Steve kind of found out about it and did some stuff, and then the so the movie Falcon and Winter Soldier. Sam uses the history of Isaiah Bradley to kind of like step up and take over as Captain America. So in Captain America: Brave New World, which I did go see yesterday, they bring that story even more into focus, where he's kind of helping train Sam, because Sam still doesn't have superpowers. He's just got a cool suit and like a willpower to do the right thing.
Right.
Like he's not superpowered like Steve was. Isaiah Bradley is. So in the comics, it's very again, only reading the Wikipedia articles and having a very vague remembrance of reading the character. Um, I don't, I couldn't quite figure out where they left Isaiah Bradley in the comics. In the movie, like he's very much going to be part of the MCU going forward, for at least like training purposes, or kind of like somebody for Sam to lean
Uh,
on,
a consultant role.
a consultant role. Now, something that they very briefly touched on in Falcon and the Winter Soldier was that his grandson Elijah, or Eli, um, has some of the superpowers. Maybe because the serum like transferred through, the fact that he's his grandson.
Oh my.
Um, but in the comic books, Elijah Bradley is known as Patriot, and he is on the Young Avengers, which is a team that they're very clearly building, with Haley Steinfeld being the young Hawkeye from the Hawkeye series.
Didn't watch
Um,
it.
no, you didn't watch that one.
Did not watch that one.
Ant-Man's daughter, Casey Lang, goes by at least one name, maybe two that I can remember. I think there's another one, but Stature and like Patriot, and then Wiccan, and well, they haven't introduced him yet, but Wiccan from the WandaVision series, or with Wanda and Vision have two kids,
Yes.
Wiccan and, remember, Speed. Yeah, Wiccan and Speed. They've only really introduced the idea of Wiccan being in the MCU with Agatha All Along, which I'm guessing you didn't watch either. I
Good.
enjoyed it.
Good guess.
um, but they brought Wiccan in, so they are slowly building out the roster for who the Young Avengers. So I think they've said, I don't know if it's going to be a Disney Plus movie or an actual theatrical movie, but they're slowly introducing these characters and everything, building it up, so that so I wouldn't be surprised if, now, unfortunately for the kid who played Elijah Bradley in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it might not be him, but at least the idea of the character is there. So, you know,
Yeah.
I think we're going to see more of that. So, also, the ninth person who has become Captain America, Bucky Barnes himself, Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
He was created in March of 41, so pretty shortly after Cap. I mean, Cap was born in December of 40. So a couple months later, you get Bucky. He took over for Captain America when Steve Rogers was killed in the '07 series. Crossbones shot him, killed him, but somehow it didn't. Well, like we talked about earlier, NERD. No one ever really dies. It didn't actually kill him. It put him in some sort of time travel loop.
Mhm.
Yeah. Red Skull had something to do with it. Bucky, they they discover that Bucky was actually Winter Soldier, so Winter Soldier had been doing all these terrible things as a assassin, and so the public was like, "Hey, we can't have that guy be Captain America," and he's like, because of who I used to be, I've kind of tainted who I am, so I can't. I'm not worthy to be Captain America. So he steps down. Captain America comes back to life, and he takes over as Captain America again. Um, then there was a guy named, I didn't even know about this one. The most of the rest of them I had at least heard of, or at least remembered their existing, but there was this one named David Rickford from March of 2011, who Nick Fury gave superpowers to try to get Steve back into becoming Captain America. Remember those other three guys who were really bad and got pretty much, ended on their first mission?
Yeah.
Yeah, this guy, first mission out, gets captured by AIM. They decide they want to turn him into the new MODOK, so Steve has to come in and save him. And Steve is like, "Yeah, you're not good at this, so you need to quit, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
be Captain America." And then
Coming
this,
coming out of retirement again.
So then the final, well, not the final, but the final one that we're really going to spend any time talking about, Sam Wilson, Falcon. He was created in December. No, I didn't write down what month it was, but 1969, making him one of the first black superheroes in comic books. He not the first, but the I think Luke Cage beat him by a little bit, but he became what most people refer to as the first one in a like an ongoing series, like a main character. Because oh no, Black Panther was first. Black Panther was first by a little bit, but he didn't become a main part of the continuity until later. He was just kind of a on and off again character for a while at the beginning. There
So,
was actually a really fascinating podcast that Marvel put out on the history of Black Panther a couple years ago that broke down like how the character was created and how he was used at the first until he kind of became his own thing and how they created a whole it's worth a listen to if you can find
hmm.
it. But so in 2014 they once again decided to uh, I guess you get bored with comics every so often, so you got to change things up. You just can't keep writing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah,
So
some if someone else like takes over writing, they want to put their own little
yeah, so
fingerprint on it.
much like what happened in the movies, Steve got depowered and became old. Uh,
As we all do, it's inevitable.
right. So Falcon, Sam Wilson took over as Captain America.
Uh,
And then after a couple of years, they were like, Steve got his power back, something to do with Thor and Thor's hammer. I don't know. I didn't read that series. I was out of it by the time that happened. So Sam goes back to being the Falcon, and Steve is back to being Captain America. There was a couple years ago a book called the United States of Captain America, where they kind of you remember Batman having like the Batman Corporation or the Batman I can't remember what it was, like Batman Incorporated. That's what it was. Where basically like Bruce Wayne hired a bunch of people to be he's like I can't be everywhere at once, so he hired a bunch of people to be kind of Batman for him around the world.
yeah.
All right. Well, this book was essentially that. Like the United States of Captain America, four people got hired out. They only did 5 issues, so I didn't bother to write a whole lot about it. Um, but four people kind of took up the mantle. But it seemed like it was kind of like the Green Lantern Corps. Like everybody knows that like Green Lantern is like this one, Hal Jordan or John Stewart, depending on which era you're talking about, Kyle Gaynor or Guy Gardner. But there's all the other, I think that's what it was, and it must not have been very successful because, like I said, it only did five issues, and I could be wrong. But all that to say is that clearly in the history of Marvel Comics, Captain America is unlike, say, Batman or Spider Man or Superman. Captain America is more of a symbol where, like, Steve Rogers keeps coming back, but every so often Steve gets killed or decides he wants to go off and do something else or gets old. So this wasn't some sort of like diversity push or like changing, the race of a character just to do it like a lot of other times they've done. This was something that comic books have done a lot. So stop. Just
So, so
learn
stop.
learn your history before you make an ass of yourself. Sam
That's not as fun though.
Sam Wilson becoming Captain America isn't just Disney, race switching or race baiting or whatever asinine term you want to use. It was something that happened in the comic books. It happened, you know, 10 years ago, before they did it in the movies. So it wasn't like the movies were like, "Hey, let's do it." And the comic people were like, "Great." It wasn't like John Diggle, the character you're now familiar with from the Arrowverse, because he did not exist in the comic books before Arrow. But he was so popular in that show, he is now part of the comics.
Oh, nice.
Harley Quinn is another example. Harley Quinn was created for the cartoon, the Adventures of Bat or whatever
Batman the animated series.
Yes, Batman the animated series. Harley Quinn was created for that. She did not exist before the animated series, but she became so popular that she is now
Everywhere.
everywhere. Thank
Yeah,
you, Hubie Halloween, for making that joke. Um,
she is everywhere.
but yeah, so it happens. It happens a lot where a movie character or a TV character gets created and they're popular enough that the comics will retroactively create that person and put them in the books.
I mean,
Um,
it makes sense. It's going to sell books.
right. This is not that case. This is a case where the comic writers did it before the movie people were like, "Oh yeah, we should do that."
Right.
You know. And like I said, there's a long history of I just read off 11 different people who were were Captain America at some point. So, you know, Batman has pretty much always been Bruce Wayne. I know there's been times where like, Dick Grayson or what's that guy's name who was Azrael? John Paul Valley. Yeah. Like they've kind of taken up the mantle of Bruce Wayne or not Bruce Wayne of Batman, but for the most part, like it's pretty much always just been Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
Peter Parker has always been Spider-Man. I know now, no, there's the Miles Morales thing, which is kind of confusing, but Miles Morales is a different character. He's never been Peter Parker. They might both call themselves Spider-Man, but they're not the same. You know, so I don't know. It's just it's kind of annoying when you hear comments or you hear people try to make this argument. It's the same thing with the Red Hulk or when they did She-Hulk. She-Hulk has been a comic book character for decades before they made a TV series. So don't
Is
just
she
be
is she
oh,
a, is she a lawyer in the comics?
it they took that almost pay it panel for panel.
Nice.
She was a lawyer in the comics. She broke the before Deadpool was breaking the fourth wall. She-Hulk was breaking the fourth wall. Like she was an interesting character. I mean, but she existed in the comics before they did the TV show. Red Hulk existed in the comics before he became part of the MCU. This isn't just something that the Disney people or Kevin Feige was like, we're gonna do this because I don't see Marvel changing the race or the gender of characters as often as DC does. But I've talked about it on moving panels a couple times. Is that if it makes sense, go for it, do it. But if you're not going to commit to it, and you end up with like the fan four stick movie,
Ugh, don't do it.
don't do it.
Just
Like
don't.
if you're not going to fully commit to the concept and really go for it, then just there's 1940 to now. What is that? Like that's 60, 80 some odd years, 85 years of history with
Uh,
Steve Rogers. Like you don't mess with that. Like
yeah, there's a pretty big sample size to choose from.
right, So that's basically what I wanted to do the history of Captain America for was that like there's there's precedent with changing the person who's wearing that costume. It's the same thing with we've talked about. Like as much as sometimes we get attached to an actor, Robert Downey Jr., Hugh Jackman, Ryan Reynolds, at some point those men are going to age out and they're not going to be able to be those characters anymore.
Nah, Hugh Jackman will always be Wolverine.
So at some point there will be somebody else playing Wolverine. It's going to happen.
Nope, not allowed.
It's just, you know, these characters exist and they're the American fairy tales. They are the Grimm's fairy tales from the old days. That is what our American version of it is. So as many times over as they make Jack and the Beanstalk or Little Mermaid, it's going to happen again. At some point, Iron Man will be either remade or rebooted, and it's going to be somebody other than Robert Downey Jr. And we just need to be okay with that because it's more about the mask than it is who's in it.
Yeah,
As long as you get the character right, and they've proven it with Batman and James Bond, get the character right and we're behind it.
yeah,
Get the character wrong and we will turn on you.
yeah. And you're done.
All right. You get one bite at the apple, George Clooney. Um, you
And
get it right,
even that's too many.
you get it right, and we'll give you an entire franchise, Christian Bale.
Or just What was it? Did Val Kilmer have two or one?
Val Kilmer only had one, but I don't think he wanted more than one because I think people kind of liked that movie. Like they didn't
Uh,
like it as much as they liked Batman and Batman Returns, but Batman Forever was a lot more accepted than Batman and Robin ever was.
yeah, that's fair. At least
Batman
they had
or
Arnold.
Batman and Robin almost killed the comic book movie industry.
Yeah, for
Then
everybody.
and then Blade saved it. Thank you, Wesley Snipes.
Is there only one blade?
There's only been one Blade so far. But no, there's been two because I there was Blade the series where Sticky Fingers played Blade.
Oh, yeah, that show.
Just because
Yeah,
I'm the only one who remembers it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
it exists. It wasn't good, but it exists.
Um. Anyway, so what do you have
Did
any?
uh did they make any indications that maybe Steve Rogers would be coming back?
No, they did not. Um, I've heard, and again, it's all rumor at this point that one of the next big things is going to be the Secret War series, where there's a lot of time travel. Because at some point, um, we have to figure out how the world of Deadpool and Wolverine is now being pulled into the MCU. Because I mean, you saw Deadpool Wolverine,
Yeah.
so you know that Deadpool has spoken to Happy Hogan, but I think that Deadpool still exists in a different universe at this point. Um, you never saw Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, right?
Yeah, saw that one.
Okay, you saw that one. So you know when he was traveling through the multiverse and he met the Illuminati.
Yeah.
Um, so we know that there's a Reed Richards that isn't the same Reed Richards that we're about to get. That
Yeah,
Reed
that was
Rich, yeah. John
that,
Krasinski is also dead. Or the
spaghetti
John,
Spaghetti Richards.
yeah, Spaghetti Richards. Um, so and have you seen the trailer for the new Fantastic Four movie yet?
Not yet.
Okay. I mean, it's on YouTube as of like a week or so ago. I think did they talk about it during the Super Bowl? I know we talked about it going to the Super Bowl.
I wasn't with when you talked about it then.
Well, me and Jeremy talked about it, but they had it. That was one of the trailers in front of Captain America: Brave New World. Seeing it on the big screen got me so excited. Like, oh, nerd.
Okay.
Um, no, but this movie is set in it's set in like the 1960s and it's called Fantastic Four: The First Steps. Now we know that from the MCU movies that Captain America existed in the 1940s and World War II, so he was technically the first. And then they kind of retconned out that Nick Fury was existing in the early 90s with Captain Marvel when she was doing her stuff. And then somehow we flash forward to a little bit when Tony Stark does his thing as Iron Man. But they didn't. So we're either going to have to live in a world where there was the Fantastic Four doing their thing in New York with Galactus, because Galactus is in the Fantastic Four trailer, and not a cloud like classic Galactus, giant Galactus with the horns, spikes coming out of his head. You don't hear him talk, but he's there. Like it's the very classic cartoon Galactus. So my guess is that the Fantastic Four takes place in another universe, and that
Okay.
the events of whatever they deal with Galactus is going to create a multiverse problem or be part of the multiverse problem that Doctor Strange started with WandaVision or with Wanda and America Chavez. And I think that's how Secret Wars is going to be created. And I think Secret Wars is going to bring in the X-Men, they're going to bring in the Fantastic Four, they're going to bring in the MCU and kind of force them all into the same universe. And then, however, the Secret Wars ends, all of them are gonna all that mishmash group is gonna end up in the same universe. So
It, it,
that going forward, we're not now like, oh, the mutants existed and they were always over here, and they ignored when Thanos came to town.
Yeah.
or the Chitari came to town, or
Anytime something bad happened, they just were
right.
like,
They were
eh.
like, nah, or the entire world forgot that the Fantastic Four existed. Like,
Yeah, we're on spring break.
right. So, that's my theory. It's an educated guess, but I have no proof, So if it doesn't happen, don't come back to me and be like, this is what you said.
Yeah. You're
It's,
getting fired from writing for Marvel.
I wish I was writing for Marvel. Life would be a little easier. But yeah, in the trailers before Captain America started, they had the Fantastic Four and the Thunderbolts. They also had a trailer for a Bugs Bunny Porky, not a Bugs Bunny, a Daffy Duck Porky Pig movie called The Day the Earth Blew Up.
Interesting.
Um, it's a full-length animated uh, theater experience movie, which I'm like, okay, Daffy Duck, Porky Pig, a bunch of other Marvel. It looked like everybody but Bugs Bunny, you know. So I'm in.
I don't know if I'd see that in theaters.
No, I'll watch it when it comes to Max, but
I don't really go to a lot of things in theaters, but I think I might go to Thunderbolts. I like Winter Soldier.
yeah. So, other than the Super Bowl, what did you watch over the last couple weeks?
Cooking shows, Arrowverse.
How so? I'm very interested by the fact that most of the time you give up 2 or 3 episodes into every
I
show you've ever watched,
I give up pretty early on things. That is a fact.
but yet you seem to be pretty committed to this Arrowverse thing. How deep into
And
you?
let me see. I just watched that one, so I'm on episode 62 because I'm in the part where I'm jumping between Arrow, Flash, and Constantine.
Okay.
So I'm on season one, episode six of Flash, which lines up with season three of Arrow. So it's episode 62 out of, let me scroll to the bottom of this long ass list here, out of 830.
It's still a big commitment.
Hey, I got 62 episodes in.
That is much better than I thought you were gonna do. But we'll see once you start adding in Batwoman and Black Lightning.
So
Or
I'd say next week's episode, check in on me again, see where I'm at.
or when you get to like season, how many do you have immediately how many seasons of Supergirl there were?
No, I can scroll down. That's one. That's two. Because it's light blue. Season two, season three. Looks like three. Might be just three. No, there's four.
Okay. When you get to season 4 of Supergirl, tell me how that's gonna work out. If see how
Five,
Oh, five. Okay. Yeah, so season 4, season 5 of Supergirl. We'll see how committed you are to this whole project.
six.
6 seasons of Supergirl? There's no way I'll watch that much of that show.
It looks like there's six seasons of Supergirl.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's season 5, season 6 then.
Yeah,
But
I mean, make a mark. What did I say I was at? Episode 62.
yeah,
It's hard too because I only really watch them on Mondays and Tuesdays
right.
because the rest of the week I'm working too much. But yeah, I'm on episode 62. I'm at the point where I got to jump between Flash, Arrow, and Constantine.
Yeah, I imagine it's going to be harder when you're trying to flip between like 6 shows and, at least you have a
But
list.
yeah, I think it'll with the six, most of them are on either Netflix or Max. I think
Yeah.
Constantine isn't on either of those. I own season one of Constantine. The only season they ever did, I own
Yeah,
on
to say, yeah.
On Voodoo.
Okay.
So I got to keep jumping between streaming services.
Yeah.
It sucks though with that. Like I really like Constantine. I don't know if you've seen it.
I don't know. I don't remember if I couldn't get into it or if I don't remember why I didn't watch it.
The I think it would have got more seasons. I know he appears later on like Legends of Tomorrow and stuff, and I think in Arrow. But where Arrow and Flash and all that stuff was that was on the CW.
Yeah.
I think Constantine was on NBC.
Yeah, it was
So it was like during like Chicago Fire, Chicago 911. Here's Constantine, America, whatever that singing one is, not America's Got Talent, American Idol.
Oh, okay,
So
yeah.
it's like this show does not fit.
No, yeah, I
And with what people are watching, if they would put that on like Sci-Fi, Spike, whatever the other one was at the time, because it's a dark show.
right.
So I think people were just kind of like, I don't like this. Why is there a bunch of cockroaches flying inside of someone's body?
Yeah, yeah, that's a show that probably should have been on Sci-Fi Channel because it did you I mean it was mid to is 2005, 2006. There's a show called Dresden Files
No, I don't remember
on
that one.
oh okay. Yeah, it was I enjoyed it. It lasted a couple seasons, but I mean, Sci-Fi Channel has a long history of like having very ambitious shows that are very good, but they don't have the money, so they can't commit. So like they put all their I mean, they did run Warehouse 13 for a long time and
That
Eureka
was
for a long time. But like then they would start a bunch of other shows like Dresden Files, and they'd be like, "Yeah, we can't afford to do all of them."
that's yeah. I don't know. But because I really like that. I think I like Matt Ryan as Constantine probably more than I like Keanu Reeves,
I could be
which which
behind that.
which I know is blasphemous because we all love Keanu.
I
But
mean, I love Keanu too, but I mean, not everything he's done has been gold.
yeah, but I like Matt Ryan's version of Constantine.
Yeah. Have you ever watched The Floor or have you started?
No, I know what
Oh,
it is. I never watched it.
okay. I really like The Floor. I've been thoroughly enjoying it. Season 3 started. It was the after Super Bowl premiere. Guess who's on? So season 1 and 2 kind of well, obviously they're on season 3. It's so the whole concept is there's 100 people and like you have to battle each other in their own trivia contest. It's like so you get 45 seconds and they'll show you a picture
All
and
right.
like so like if it's like famous British rock stars. Like they'll show you, and you gotta, or like sometimes it'll be like you have to fill in the blank. So it'll be like half a book title, and like you've got to give a word or two.
Can they just
Um,
show me like pictures of NFL quarterbacks?
if that was your category, NFL quarterbacks, yes. But unfortunately for
I could
you,
probably nail it.
yes, unfortunately for you, there's 100 people, which means there's a lot of other categories that you're not gonna because like on the second season, one of the categories was periodic tables.
Oh God,
Yeah,
I could do a couple.
yeah. This guy had it pretty much nailed. Like he memorized the periodic table, which was great. It kept him. People didn't want to battle that guy for a long time, but once he got outside of that, although I think he might have actually won season 2. Spoiler, but we're in season 3, so get over it. Um,
Hey, we've always said on this podcast that we're going to give you spoilers. We don't care,
right, pretty much.
especially
Uh,
when they're already on a different season.
right, yeah. But yeah, it's sometimes like, and then they'll have categories like Fortune 500, stock symbols, or one lady had beans,
Like beans,
beans. Like
like
that was,
like navy black, pinto, kidney. All,
absolutely.
all right,
Yeah. Um, but season 3, there's been a couple of interesting things that I've noticed on this one that they've not had before. Season 3, one of the categories is Summer Olympics, and the person who has that category is an Olympian from the 80s.
all right.
Um,
They're
I don't.
branching out with celebrities.
Celebrities being a very loose term. They had a Harlem Globetrotter,
Okay,
but the one of the little person Harlem Globetrotters. They have a married couple that I mean, second season they had twin brothers, but this season they have a married couple and a mother daughter. So like, different categories. Obviously, they're not standing together. So at some point, there's a very real potential that the husband and wife will have to battle each other.
nice.
But there's one actual in our world anyway celebrity on season 3. Dante from Clerks, Brian O'Halloran.
Yeah, I saw him on there.
Yeah.
It was popped up on something.
Yeah. His currently, and again, this is something that's currently happening, but they're like 2 episodes in, so it's not like I can spoil very much. But currently, like, so if you're the lead, if you have the most territory at the end of the episode, you win $20,000.
Oh,
So
all right.
and you can add that, like, it's $20,000 every time you're the leader at the end of the episode.
Oh, so it's like per episode you can win this.
Yes.
Got
And
it.
then if you win the whole thing, you win 250,000
On top of your
on
20,000 a day?
if it because there's a way that you could win the whole thing and you never won the 20,000.
So then wait, if you win the whole thing, it's 250.
Yes.
If you win every day and the whole thing, is it the
That's
250 plus the 20?
yes.
Damn.
However, the problem is that this is a strategy thing. Unfortunately, once you become the big territory, it's easier for you to pick. So there's a thing called the randomizer. So it's 100 people, and then it just around, and then it picks somebody. But it's only until everybody's gone once. It's not allowed to pick you again. So it's never going to pick. So like if you've already been up and battled, you're not going to be picked again until everybody is gone at least once. So,
That's 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 nice.
but unfortunately, if you have the most territory, that means the most people that are around you touching your category can now challenge you because you can only challenge somebody who's next to you.
Okay.
So if nobody's gone, you only have 4 options when you go. Unless you're a corner piece, then you only have 2 options. But 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 now if you have 10 pieces of floor, that is however many people are around you touching you can now challenge you. And everybody wants that 20,000. So if they touch you, they're coming at you every time. So that means if you get the most territory at early on, you're going to be battled so
A,
many
a
times,
lot.
a lot. So those people, if you get too much territory early, you don't tend to stick around for very long, maybe a couple episodes because people, unless you have a category that people don't want to touch,
Like the periodic table.
like the periodic table. Um, some people are smart enough to know that, like, hey, if I go up against this guy and I win, I now have the most territory. I potentially win the 20,000. But unless it's the last battle of the night, I'm going to be challenged again and then I could just be out. So sometimes it's not necessarily the smartest play to go after the guy with the biggest territory. Sometimes the best idea is to win your one battle and then go back to the floor and then hope people forget about you. Stick with 2 or 3 pieces of territory and then you can win the whole thing. Or just, understand that there's a good chance you're not going to be the one standing at the end. You might as well get the 20 grand and walk away with something.
Something. What is Brian's category?
It was convenience store items.
It was, so he's out.
No, he won.
Hmm.
But once you battle in that category, you inherit whoever you challenged, or whoever.
So if
So
you're, let's say you have Marvel and I have NFL quarterbacks. If you beat me, you have both of those categories now.
no, I now have NFL quarterbacks,
Just NFL quarterbacks,
just NFL quarterbacks, because like if you challenged me at Marvel and then I win,
which you would.
I now inherit your category. I can't. This is the problem. I have a hard time remembering. Like if I challenge, so if you challenge me, yeah. So if I had Marvel, you would challenge me in Marvel, and then I would win. I would now inherit NFL quarterbacks. Now, for me, that would be great because I would still be pretty good at that category. But unfortunately, sometimes you inherit things like beans
Beans.
or
I was trying to think of what I
or
could say.
airport codes,
Oh God.
right? So sometimes you inherit a category and honestly, like watching somebody win and then watching them win a category or inherit a category that they don't know might work out to your benefit to challenge that person before they have a chance to go, like especially like if it's in the same episode, because I don't knowing having been on the other side of the game show world for one show, I don't know how every show works, but I know that like unless they're only filming one episode a day, which seems unlikely, they're still only filming maybe two episodes a day for because it's an hour long show. So they're not going to be there. It's not like Jeopardy where they're knocking out like six episodes a day because they're half-hour shows and they've got it down to a fine, you know, a fine thing.
Yeah.
So they're only filming maybe two episodes a day. So if somebody inherits a category and you can challenge them right away, it might work out to your benefit. But if it's the towards the end of the day, they're going to get a chance to go back to the hotel and
And
study.
read all about beans.
Now, season two, we noticed that some of these people don't go back to the hotel and study. Like
Is it worth going back and watching seasons one and two?
it might be just because it's fun. I mean, obviously, I've spoiled some of it, but remembering it is also
Uh,
difficult.
I'll try to add the floor to my watch
Yeah,
for next, so I have something for next week. Otherwise, like Cutthroat Kitchen, I'm still watching that one.
yeah. We're still watching Beat Bobby Flay. We're pretty far into that. We just burned through Triple Threat. We watched all of that.
I
I watched Gladiator 2 today.
All right, good.
It was good. It wasn't I what we what re I rewatched Gladiator yesterday or Thursday. I don't know. We just rewatched it. So like it was kind of fresh in the mind and it was good, but it wasn't maybe as good as I remembered it being. But
Okay.
it was a worthy successor. It was one of those like you took 25 years to do it, but at least you found a way to make it make sense. Um, it was enjoyable. It was still worth watching. It wasn't like Zoolander 2 where you're like, "Oh god, that was awful."
Yeah, that didn't need to be made.
Yeah, that was you didn't find a way to do that.
Joe Dirt too.
I don't even think I made it all the way through Joe Dirt 2.
Yeah, Joe Dirt one was already like, why did you do this?
Yeah, but Joe Dirt 1 is fun.
Yeah.
Like it's not good, but it's fun. You know what I
Eh,
did watch that was really bizarre and it was kind of was the Saturday Night Live concert that they did Friday night.
I didn't even know they did that.
Yeah, they had I mean most people only did like one song, but they brought out like I mean so many alumni from Saturday Night Live, but Andy Sandberg came out and did Dick in a Box with Lady Gaga.
Nice.
And then they just did a medley of a bunch of the Lonely
They
Island songs from
they
Saturday
have
Night Live.
they have a song together.
Uh, Lonely Island and Lady
Lady
Gaga.
Gaga. Yeah.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, it's
I don't,
the golden rule.
oh, I forgot about that one. But yeah, no, they didn't do any Lonely Island songs that hadn't been from the show. So like if it was just on the if it was from Popstar or from one of the albums, it wasn't there. But they brought out instead of Michael Bolton, they brought out Eddie Vedder to do the Jack Sparrow, the Ballad of Jack Sparrow.
Okay.
I mean they had so many famous people. Cher did a song, like not with Lonely Island, but I mean they just did like so they brought out a whole bunch of Bill Murray came out and did a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, it was, I mean, there was a couple that we fast forwarded through, but you know,
Um,
they're doing that big 50 right now. They're airing that big 50th anniversary just special in general. So, all right, well then, any that's okay. So I watched Captain America, The Floor, and Gladiator 2. Okay, do we want to talk about the Super Bowl at all?
we're already running a little long. We could
Okay,
probably
all right, that's good enough then.
game was boring. I think because it wasn't very didn't seem very competitive.
No,
Commercials relatively weren't very good.
no.
I thinking back to it, I don't remember many of them, if any.
No, there's a couple of them, but for the most part, the commercials this year were poor.
And I didn't, and the halftime show to me was also boring.
Yeah,
So
I am not the right demographic for that
no,
show. I
I
know a
did
lot of
say that was Serena Williams, though, and I was right on that one.
you were very right on that. I was wrong. mainly because I didn't believe she would do something like that. But she was there.
Now, otherwise, boring commercials, boring halftime show, not a very competitive game.
No, hopefully we'll get two teams that are not those in the Super Bowl next year,
Yeah,
and maybe the commercial people will take the challenge and try to raise their game because the last couple of years have been kind of bad.
that
And
is true.
then with it being in San Francisco, hopefully, since people are calling the NFL out to task for not doing more of a New Orleans based music artist or New Orleans based music in general, which they've never done before. So I don't know why all of a sudden people are upset about it.
I
But
think because they wanted Lil Wayne.
right.
I think that's the
Uh,
only reason.
but being that it's going to be in San Francisco next year, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's out there. I don't know if it's in San Francisco or Santa Clara or
Well, I mean,
whichever.
Santa Clara is, I mean, that's where the 49ers play. So that'll be where the Super Bowl is, but they'll call it San Francisco. Anyway, there are two very big bands from San Francisco, one of which I think is one we've been calling for doing the halftime for a very long time. Can you name one of the two San Francisco bands that I'm thinking of?
I don't know. It's just I was gonna say the Foo Fighters.
They are not San Francisco.
Ah,
If anything, they would be Seattle. Um,
ah, no. What's
well,
San, what's
you've
San
got
Francisco?
you've got the Grateful Dead, which probably
Ass.
probably not a halftime show, especially since most of those guys are
Gratefully
well,
Dead.
yeah. Or one of the biggest bands to ever come out of San Francisco, Metallica.
That would be an awesome halftime show.
Yes, it would be.
All right.
So, all right. I guess then if you're too stupid to realize that comic books have been around for 80, well, more than 80 years, and that there's a history to doing things, just remember, stupid never walks alone.
Comic books have been around for almost a century, and in the last 2 decades, we've finally gotten to see many of these characters brought to life in movies and on TV. On the Moving Panels podcast, we discuss movies and TV shows based on, inspired by, and adapted from the world of comic books. Join me and my guests as we discuss both the good and the bad from Marvel, DC, and even some of the lesser-known comic book companies. Learn what is and isn't from the comics, as well as our nerdy review of the movie or show. New episodes drop every Monday, and you can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. So join us for Moving Panels, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.
Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and listen to an 80s flick flashback podcast once in a while, you could miss it. Do you love movies of a certain age? Do you miss the days of VHS tapes, VCRs, and the video rental stores? Does the thought of another 80s movie being remade seem inconceivable? My name is Tim Williams. I'm the creator and host of the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast. On each episode, I'm joined by guest co-hosts to discuss one of the many movies released in the 1980s. We share our first-time watch memories, our favorite scenes, and even learn some behind-the-scenes stories about the cast and crew along the way. New episodes are released every other Friday on your favorite podcasting platform. So make like a tree, get out of here, and go listen to an excellent episode of the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast. The ad is over. Go home. Go.